And let's go to the man of the moment, Salman Khurshid, Congress leader, now joins me. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Khurshid. You've stirred a controversy and, I know sadly your house has been attacked. But that one statement in your book, Sunrise over Ayodhya, where you in a way liken or draw a simile, a parallel between what you call a robust version of Hindutva and jihadist Islam of groups like ISIS and Boko Haram. In hindsight, do you agree, Mr. Khurshid, that that statement was provocative, it was perhaps false, ill-conceived and certainly exaggerated?
Not at all. If I had to do that, I would have called a press conference and done so. I'm afraid somebody who disagrees with it hasn't made a clear case for disagreeing. But I can share with you that their disagreement has gone to the extent of burning down my front door of my house in Nainital. Doesn't that prove what I was saying? That there is an attitudinal position and an understanding of what they call Hindutva, which contradicts Hinduism, that contradicts any form of humanism. And the validity of my statement is apparent now by what they have done, not simply abusing linguistically on the phone and on the social media, but actually physically attacking one's home.
But Mr. Khurshid, while one accepts that any form of violence is condemnable, including what has happened to your house today, I want to for a moment just return to what you said. When you compare, as you call it, robust political Hindutva with, let's say, jihadist Islam of groups like ISIS and Boko Haram, which are avowed terrorist groups, which have killed thousands of people over the years, which want a violent overthrow of the nation state, where they've killed, majority of the people they've killed are Muslims. Can you really compare it to political Hindutva? Can you compare a terrorist group like ISIS with political Hindutva, much as you may dislike it?
Rajdeep, I have said there is a similarity. I have not said that they are identical or same. So there are certain attributes, and the attribute that runs through my thoughts is an attribute of misuse of religion, contorting religion. Now, if I can say that about jihadist Islam, which is my religion, Islam is my religion, and someone that misuses that religion to do those awful things, why am I prevented from saying this about someone else who is misusing his or her religion to do a similar thing? Mm-hmm. Not the same thing, mind you, similar. And if you ask me to recount similar things, I could continue to do so for a whole day, but that's not my purpose. Mm-hmm. My purpose is not to highlight lynching. My purpose is not to highlight rapes and other things that have happened. My purpose is to forgive and move forward. My purpose is to unite all religions, and that's what I've intended to do by supporting the Ayodhya judgment as well.
But you could be accused when you say, I'm claiming it's similar to ISIS and Boko Haram. I'm not saying it's the same as engaging in wordplay. You claim that you want to bring people together, but in a way, all you seem to have done, Mr. Khurshid, is given a handle perhaps to those today within the Hindutva group, within the Sangh Parivar, just before a critical election in your home state of Uttar Pradesh, to say, look, here is Salman Khurshid, influential Congress Muslim voice, who's damning Hindutva, demonizing Hindutva, which the Sangh Parivar and dare I say even the Supreme Court in a judgment called a way of life. You're damning it by linking it to avowed groups with terrorist ideologies, and thereby you've given an opportunity to your critics to further religious polarization.
So what shall I do? Shall I just surrender to Hindutva? Shall I just surrender to someone who misuses religion just because there's an election around the corner? But I'm sorry, my leadership has taken a clear, categorical, ideological position, and I don't believe that I have departed from that position. My leadership has said Hindutva and Hinduism are two different things, and that's why they have two different names. One believes in killing of innocent people and one believes in a composite culture. My leadership has said that. Now you want me to leave my leadership's ideological opinions and submit to the opinions of people who believe in a variety of things that includes violence perpetrated against innocent people.
You know, but Mr. Khurshid, it's not just your critics, even those within your own party. Gulam Nabi Azad, for example, has said your statements are falsified and exaggerated in a way that this is a wrong comparison, a completely needless, unacceptable, some would say, comparison to draw.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So Gulam Nabi Azad is my leader, Rahul Gandhi isn't. Is that right? I have to choose Gulam Nabi Azad because you find his statement more exciting than Rahul Gandhi's. I'm sorry. Gulam Nabi Azad is a respected leader, he's a good leader, he's a great leader, but I'm sorry, I have a disagreement with him. When he uses the word exaggeration, I assume there is something that I have exaggerated. What is that something? Why doesn't he tell us?
You know, Mr. Khurshid, the question I think is that while that this is a interesting intellectual academic debate to have on Hinduism versus Hindutva, which is perhaps what your original intention when you write a book is, but in terms of political ground realities, in terms of political strategy, there will be those today who see this as a needless rant at this moment against Hinduism and Hindutva, which is perhaps, you know, at the end of the day, not in sync with what is happening. Look at your own party. It has tied up with the Shiv Sena, which claims to be the original Hindutva party of Maharashtra. Are you going to tell me tomorrow that Shiv Sena is also a party that believes in an ISIS kind of terror? It's your linkage with ISIS that puts your position in puts you in a problematic position.
Does it? Has anyone said that Shiv Sena believes in that? Has anyone said that? If they want to, they go ahead and say it. But Shiv Sena coming with the Congress was, according to me, a grand coming together of forces that ultimately believe in the welfare of the people and the country. Now, if Shiv Sena is a reformed Shiv Sena or a progressive Shiv Sena, why, just to please you or to the forces of the right, we should stay away from Shiv Sena? I think this is a process of learning, discovering, evolving, both for the Congress as indeed for the Shiv Sena. And I support it. And all Muslims that I know, leaders on the Congress party in Maharashtra, have strongly supported this. Now, if they've strongly supported it, why should I disagree? I'm sorry, I don't have any grounds to disagree.
No, but that precisely is where I am taking this argument now, that there are perhaps varying shades of Hindutva, that Hindutva too has evolved. The Shiv Sena used to call itself very firmly a Hindutva party, was accused in the 92-93 riots of the demolition of the Babri Masjid and the riots that followed. I want to understand, therefore, what is your definition of Hindutva? When you say that a robust version of political Hindutva is akin to Boko Haram and ISIS, please give me your definition, spell it out more clearly, more explicitly, rather than just one casual remark.
No, I'm not going to give you that definition for the simple reason that that would increase the distance between the right and the left, between us and them. I want that distance to be reduced. On some other occasion, somewhere else in an appropriate place, we can argue this till the cows come home. No problem. But this is no occasion for me to give you red rags to wave at the opposition or the other side. I'm not going to do that. I am saying to you, my leadership has ideologically taken the same position as I have. Please go back to the statement that was made by Mr. Rahul Gandhi. Find fault with me vis-a-vis a statement that he has made, or find fault with him if you want to, and I will protect and defend him for what he has said. That's all. No. I am not going to fall and into the trap that is laid all the time for me to react to a script that is written by somebody else.
You know, let's look, since you're referring once again to Rahul Gandhi, let's look at what Rahul Gandhi said in that video. He said Hindutva and Hinduism, he believes, are different. That Hinduism does not believe in the killings of innocents, like an akhlaq was killed allegedly for cow slaughter. This has led the BJP to say that the likes of Rahul Gandhi and indeed Salman Khurshid have a pathological hatred for Hinduism when they make this distinction between Hinduism and Hindutva. How do you respond to that?
I respond that by saying that while they were saying that I have a hatred for Hinduism, I was sitting in Kalki Dham listening to Shankaracharya of the Kashi Peeth. If I have hatred, I wouldn't go to Kalki Dham. Now, my admiration and my persuasion and my celebration of Hinduism is in the manner in which I understand, and that excludes Hindutva of the contemporary times. It excludes it. I'm not even going into the history of Hindutva. But the contemporary times Hindutva I reject, and the latest that you want to see about what they do is the burnt door of my home in Nainital.
Sir,
please
but the
say that that's wrong. Nobody says that's wrong. How come nobody says that's wrong?
Sir, I am saying all forms of religious extremism, whether Islamic religious extremism or Hindu religious extremism is wrong. But I am looking at the wider debate that you seem to be wanting to spark off over Hindutva's philosophy. Clearly, Hindutva means different things to different people. But when in one brushstroke you choose to liken it or draw a similarity with Boko Haram and ISIS, aren't you weakening the very argument of those who would like to expose perhaps those violent elements who have misused Hindutva and have made it perhaps, also a weapon of hate? That's my point. By making the kind of argument that you are, aren't you weakening the cause of many who would like to expose violent aspects of Hindutva?
Well, tell me, if there are elements of Hindutva, tell me which elements they are and I will endorse it. And which elements of Hindutva are not dangerous, you tell me that, I'll endorse it too. No problem. I said a political version. I've said a robust version. Now, whatever is excluded from the political and robust version may well be acceptable. There's no problem. There's no problem. To believe in an identity and celebrate that identity by way of belonging to Hindutva is no problem for me. It's what they have done, and specifically to mention each one of those heinous acts that they have performed and done in this country will be taking me away from my agenda, which is to bring people together rather than to drive a distance between them.
But precisely that's what's happening. The wedge is widening when such statements are made. Therefore, people will today say, dare I say, Salman Khurshid, that you are in a way disconnected from ground reality. You don't have any skin in the political game. The Congress itself doesn't have skin in the game in Uttar Pradesh at the moment. You're a marginal party, so you can, as part of a book, as literary license, have this diatribe. But on the ground, what it's going to do is result in religion becoming squarely part of the election agenda, and that eventually leads to religious polarization between Hindus and Muslims. How does it build bridges?
Well, therefore I should be frozen and I should say nothing. I mean, Rajiv, you believe in freedom of speech, surely. Freedom of speech is not to be truncated by elections. Is not to be truncated by time. Freedom of speech is perennial. It is for all times. And I don't understand how the media is giving us advice to truncate freedom of speech because it will benefit us by keeping quiet. So every time we remain silent, I don't want to go into that story about what happened in the times of Hitler, that people who kept silent were the next victims, and then somebody else was silent, they became the next victims, and so on. Let's not go down that path. Let's be prepared to speak the truth.
So in a way, Mr. Khurshid, what you're telling me is that you're standing by what you've written. You're not backing down or climbing down or doing a U-turn. You're very clear. You believe in what you say. You maintain that there are these aspects of political Hindutva that are similar to violent terror groups. Am I to understand this? And I'm posing this directly to you, that in a way the party in power, the BJP, which is also part of the wider Sangh Parivar, which believes in Hindutva, that this too is part of this robust version of political Hindutva that you are going to liken to these violent terrorist Islamic groups?
Well, of course, I've said it. Why do you keep asking me that question again? Do you want me to to be more provocative. I've said so. I've said so. There's no question of retreating. There's no question of withdrawing. And I certainly would have reflected upon it if this was inconsistent with what my party thinks and does. But it is not. It's compatible with what my party thinks and does, and therefore I will stand by it. I am not going to make a compromise for political gain. I want the truth to prevail in this country, but I also want Hindus and Muslims to come together. And that's the why I celebrate a beautiful religion called Hinduism. And I believe it's my duty to protect Hinduism from these kind of marauding Hindutva people.
You're calling them marauding Hindutva people, but the fact is these marauders, or some of them, are today in power. If we are to go by your definition of political Hindutva, these groups have won 2 successive elections with a large majority. A large number of Hindus support them, including in your home state of Uttar Pradesh. And like it or not, they've come through the constitutional route. They've not done a violent takeover like ISIS. Are we to disregard that? Is there, in a sense, Salman Khurshid, in some of your arguments, an elitism that creeps in? That who are these marauders who have taken over political power?
So you're saying in an one election or 2 elections won by anybody is the end of debate. So that all the elections that we won since 1947 should have ended this debate. Why did this debate happen despite our winning elections? So Rajdeep, don't reduce democracy to a farce. Hitler also won elections, but that didn't justify what he did. So winning elections doesn't justify what is done. The Constitution, the Supreme Court will finally decide. And that's why I support what the Supreme Court did in Ayodhya. And nobody seems to be concerned that I support the judgment of Ayodhya. There are people who may disagree with the judgment in Ayodhya, and they may think I'm completely and utterly wrong, that I'm being subservient to the Supreme Court. But I don't care. I'm speaking the truth. I believe it's a good judgment, and I believe it's a judgment that will contribute to a greater combination between Hindus and Muslims.
The reason I'm asking you this, because Mr. Khurshid, at the end of the day, you are an active politician. Now, as I said earlier, it's one thing to have an intellectual academic debate, and it should be had on the context of Hindutva. But a legal, once a legal debate, an academic debate enters the realm of politics, it becomes very different. In the political realm, what you have said will be easily seen as toxic in this, particularly in this age of social media where news travels in real time. People don't want complex arguments. What you said will be seen as a rant, and your political opponents will project Hindus as victims and play on the community's fears and their prejudices and say, look, Salman Khurshid doesn't take on Islamic extremism and he's now taking on Hindutva terror. How do you respond to that?
And they didn't project them as victims before I said this. Huh? Before I said that, they were very different, they were very liberal, they were very outgoing and reaching out to people. So the lynching that happened had nothing to do with them. The killings that happened had nothing to do with them. The riots that happened had nothing to do with them. It's only now that my book has come that these things will happen for the first time. Rajdeep, don't teach me politics. Leave politics to me. Leave analysis to you. And leave the deeper conversation to scholars. But be that as it may, it is not fair that you say that politicians must operate only at the lowest common denominator. Let's raise politics to a higher level.
I want to ask you, therefore, since you want to raise politics to a higher level, nothing would please me more. But the context is that we can sit in a television studio and debate Hinduism versus Hindutva. But on the ground, what this does is there is religious polarization, because the sufferers, dare I say, Mr. Khurshid, will be the average Muslim or the average Hindu on the street who find themselves targeted at times because of what is said by their leaders, who perhaps don't have to face, you and I, or you don't have to face the day-to-day targeting that perhaps the average Muslim has to face on the street?
Well, two things, Rajdeep. One, you're telling me because there is a gun to my head or to someone else's head, therefore I should not speak what I want to speak. That's what you're telling me. Secondly, when you say the common man, the common Muslim will suffer, you wouldn't because you're an elite. Today, my door has been burnt. My door has been burnt. Tomorrow, it could be worse. So don't you worry about that. It's my duty to look after my people, and my people are not Muslims alone, they are Hindus as well. We will fight for the salvation of Hindu Dharma, which is a very beautiful religion, and we will ensure that it is saved from these people.
Let me leave it there, Salman Khurshid. Once again, those saddening pictures of your house, as I said, no one wants to see any form of violence. And maybe debates which take place in forums like this need to be understood in their complexity rather than reduced to one-liners. For now, Salman Khurshid, I appreciate your joining me here on the news today. Salman Khurshid there on the Hinduism versus Hindutva debate. What happens to real issues of our times?